Jim Carrey went from a small-time Canadian comedian to the highest-paid movie star in the world in just a single year. He remains one of Hollywood's most iconic and unpredictable performers. His career is a story of explosive success, emotional depth, and a public image shaped as much by brilliance as by controversy. But behind the laughter, behind the elastic face and manic energy, there has always been another story, one of struggle, instability, and a mind constantly balancing between comedy and chaos. Jim Carrey was born near Toronto, Ontario, to Kathleen and Percy Carey. His mother stayed at home while his father worked a series of unstable jobs as a musician and laborer. The family's financial situation was never stable, and life often felt uncertain. As a child, Jim learned early how to cope with instability in the only way he knew, by making people laugh. But the origins of his humor were not entirely joyful. His mother suffered from chronic health issues and, in an unusual coping mechanism, often joked about death in front of her children. While she may have been trying to ease the tension in the household, it had a deep psychological effect on young Jim. He developed an intense and persistent fear of death. At the same time, he became determined to make his mother smile, believing that if he could make her laugh, he could somehow ease her pain. This emotional contradiction became the foundation of his comedic identity. Humor mixed with anxiety, performance mixed with survival. Jim was not a social child. He often preferred solitude, choosing mirrors over playgrounds and quiet observation over playing with other kids. While others his age were busy building friendships, he was busy building expressions. Hours would pass as he studied his own face, testing how far he could stretch a smile, how sharply he could shift from joy to sadness, and how quickly he could transform into entirely different characters. By the age of 8, he was already performing with unusual confidence. He didn't just imitate people, he became them. Teachers and family members noticed his early talent for impressions and physical comedy, as he would mimic voices, gestures, and even exaggerated movements with surprising accuracy. What seemed like childish play was, in reality, the beginning of a carefully self-taught craft. Driven by ambition beyond his years, he once wrote a letter to comedian Carol Burnett. In it, he introduced himself as a young performer, skilled in impressions, and boldly requested a chance to appear on her show. Although he never received a role, Burnett reportedly replied, offering him a small but meaningful acknowledgement that stayed with him for years. But behind this growing sense of purpose and imagination, life at home was beginning to fall apart. The Carey family's financial situation worsened significantly, pushing them into a life of constant uncertainty and struggle. At one point, they lost their home entirely and were forced to live out of a Volkswagen van, carrying their belongings wherever they could fit them. For a period of time, Jim, still a teenager, experienced life in a small tent near the shores of Lake Ontario, where survival often depended on endurance more than comfort. Eventually, some relief came when his father managed to secure work at a tire factory in Scarborough. This job brought the family a sense of fragile stability after years of instability and hardship. However, that stability was not without sacrifice. As part of the arrangement, Jim and his brother were required to take on night shifts at the same factory, working long hours in difficult conditions. By the age of 16, Jim made the decision to drop out of school. Traditional education and a conventional career path no longer felt meaningful to him. After everything he had already experienced, poverty, instability, and responsibility at such a young age, he struggled to believe in a predictable future. Yet even during exhausting factory shifts, his dream of becoming a performer never disappeared. Jim began performing in comedy clubs around Toronto, stepping into a world that was far less welcoming than he had imagined. The environment was harsh and unforgiving, where audiences preferred seasoned, edgy comedians rather than a skinny teenager relying on impressions and exaggerated physical comedy. From the very beginning, he stood out, but not always in a positive way. He was frequently booed off stage, and many of his early performances ended in complete failure. Each night brought new humiliation, new silence, or laughter that wasn't in his favor. Yet despite the setbacks, he kept returning. Something inside him refused to accept that failure was the final answer. Every rejection became another reason to try again, to refine his timing, and to push his physical comedy further. In 1980, Jim auditioned for Saturday Night Live, hoping it would be his breakthrough moment. Instead, he was rejected. Not once, but repeatedly. He would audition 2 more times over the years and face rejection each time. Still, he refused to give up on the idea. Slowly, however, his persistence began to pay off in smaller circles. Word of his unusual talent started spreading. One major turning point came when comedian Rodney Dangerfield noticed him and invited him to open for his tour. That opportunity exposed Jim to much larger audiences and gave him a first real taste of recognition beyond small clubs. Eventually, with growing ambition and determination, Jim made the bold decision to move to Los Angeles, where bigger opportunities and bigger challenges awaited him. In Los Angeles, Jim Carrey immersed himself in the competitive world of stand-up comedy, performing regularly at the Comedy Store, one of the most influential comedy venues in the industry. Surrounded by rising comedians and industry scouts, he quickly set a clear and ambitious goal for himself: to earn a spot on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, the ultimate gateway to national recognition for any comedian at the time. After years of grinding, he finally received what seemed like his big break. He was booked to appear on the show. It felt like everything he had worked for was finally within reach. However, just before his scheduled appearance aired, fate took an unexpected turn. Producers witnessed another one of his performances, and reportedly, the set did not go as planned. Concerns were raised, and in a crushing decision, his booking was canceled. For Jim, it was more than just a professional setback. It was a devastating moment that could have easily broken his confidence. But Carrey was never someone who stayed down for long. His life had already been shaped by hardship, poverty in childhood, repeated rejection in comedy clubs, and years of uncertainty. Compared to what he had already endured, Hollywood rejection was simply another challenge to overcome rather than a final defeat. Instead of stepping back, he doubled down on his ambition. He refined his craft, continued performing, and kept pushing forward in the industry. Slowly but surely, his persistence began to open new doors, and the momentum he needed was finally starting to build. In the early 1990s, Jim Carrey joined the sketch comedy show In Living Color, a program known for its bold humor and unconventional style. It was here that his unique comedic identity fully began to take shape. His bizarre characters, exaggerated facial expressions, and unpredictable physical energy instantly set him apart from the rest of the cast. While others delivered jokes, Carrey transformed them into full performances, using his body, voice, and expressions in ways audiences had rarely seen before. Gradually, Hollywood began to take notice. Casting directors and producers started recognizing that there was something different about this performer, a level of intensity and originality that could not be ignored. Then came 1994, the year everything changed. Jim Carrey's first major film breakthrough arrived with Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. The low-budget comedy was not expected to be a major success, but it exploded at the box office, earning over $100 million and turning Carrey into an overnight sensation. That same year, he starred in The Mask, another unexpected hit that showcased his elastic, almost cartoon-like performance style. His ability to combine physical comedy with visual effects made him unlike any other actor in Hollywood at the time. As if 2 massive hits were not enough, Dumb and Dumber followed, completing one of the most extraordinary breakout years in film history. 3 major comedy films, all released in the same year, each becoming a cultural phenomenon. Within months, Jim Carrey had transformed from a struggling stand-up comedian into a global superstar. Studios rushed to sign him, desperate to capitalize on his sudden popularity. His salary skyrocketed from modest amounts in the hundreds of thousands to several millions per film. Eventually, he made history by becoming the first actor to earn $20 million for a single movie role. Hollywood had never experienced anything like his rise before, and it marked a new era of comedy stardom. But rapid success brought with it an intense and often overwhelming pressure that Jim Carrey had never experienced before. The same fame that elevated him to global superstardom also began to place strain on nearly every part of his personal life. The transition from struggling comedian to one of Hollywood's biggest names was not only dramatic, but also deeply destabilizing. His marriage to Melissa Wummer, which had begun during his years of financial hardship and uncertainty, eventually began to suffer under the weight of his rising fame. What had once been a relationship built in shared struggle slowly became strained by distance, public attention, and the demands of an ever-growing career. After 7 years together, the couple ultimately divorced, marking the end of a significant chapter in his personal life. At the same time, Carrey's public image became more complex. His high-energy personality, once seen as fresh and exciting, now made him a polarizing figure behind the scenes. While audiences continued to adore him, some co-stars and directors found him unpredictable, especially during intense or method-driven performances where he fully immersed himself in his characters. Despite these challenges, his talent remained undeniable. Carrey successfully expanded beyond comedy and transitioned into dramatic acting, proving his range as a performer. Films like The Truman Show earned widespread critical acclaim, showcasing a more emotional and reflective side of his abilities. Similarly, Man on the Moon, where he portrayed the eccentric comedian Andy Kaufman, further established him as a serious dramatic actor, willing to take creative risks. However, this artistic transformation was not without controversy. His immersive acting style, emotional intensity, and behind-the-scenes behavior often sparked debate within the industry, leaving audiences divided between admiration for his genius and concern over his methods. During the production of Man on the Moon, Jim Carrey took his approach to performance to an extreme level of immersion that deeply affected the entire filmmaking process. Instead of simply portraying Andy Kaufman on camera, he committed to living as the character throughout the duration of filming. This meant that even when the cameras were not rolling, he continued to behave, speak, and react exactly as Kaufman would have, refusing to step out of the role for extended periods. His transformation was so complete that it extended beyond scripted scenes. Carrey interacted with cast and crew entirely through the lens of Kaufman's personality, which often led to confusion and unpredictability on set. Many members of the production team described the working environment as chaotic, as it became increasingly difficult to distinguish where performance ended and reality began. The atmosphere was constantly shifting, shaped by his unpredictable commitment to character immersion. Over time, this unusual method of working placed a significant strain on the production. Some crew members found the experience emotionally and physically draining, as the constant unpredictability disrupted normal filming routines. Despite the challenges, the production continued, though it developed a reputation for its unconventional and sometimes uncomfortable atmosphere. After the film was completed, Carrey reflected on the experience and described it as something profoundly transformative. He suggested that it felt as though he had been overtaken by the essence of Andy Kaufman himself, losing his own identity in the process of performance. For him, it was not simply acting, but a complete psychological and emotional journey into another persona. This approach divided opinion within the industry. Some viewed it as a remarkable display of artistic dedication, while others considered it excessive and disruptive. Regardless of perspective, the role marked a significant shift in how Hollywood perceived Jim Carrey, redefining him not only as a comedian, but as a deeply intense and unconventional dramatic performer, willing to push boundaries in the pursuit of authenticity. Throughout his career, Jim Carrey's personal life was often marked by instability and public attention. Despite his professional success, his private relationships frequently faced challenges under the pressure of fame. Over the years, he was connected to several well-known figures in the entertainment industry, including actress Lauren Holly, whom he married briefly before the relationship came to an end. As his celebrity status grew, so did the level of media interest in his private affairs. Every new relationship became a subject of public discussion, with speculation and rumors often surrounding his personal choices. The constant attention made it difficult for him to maintain privacy or stability outside of his work. One of the most widely discussed relationships in his later life was with makeup artist Catriona White. Their connection eventually ended, but the situation took a tragic turn in 2015 when she passed away. Her death brought intense media coverage and placed Carrey under an overwhelming public spotlight. In the aftermath, legal actions were initiated, drawing even more attention to an already sensitive situation. Although the lawsuits that followed were eventually dismissed, the entire episode had a lasting impact on how the public viewed him. It became a deeply emotional and complicated chapter in his life, extending far beyond the boundaries of celebrity gossip. The media coverage surrounding the case added further complexity to his public image, which was already shaped by decades of fame, controversy, and artistic intensity. As a result, Carrey's personal experiences became inseparably linked with his celebrity status, reinforcing the challenges of living life under constant public scrutiny. Despite ongoing controversy and emotional challenges, Jim Carrey remained active in film and television, continuing to evolve as an artist rather than stepping away from the spotlight. Over time, he gravitated toward more complex and darker roles, choosing projects that explored psychological depth, identity, and human emotion, rather than relying solely on physical comedy. Alongside acting, he also developed a strong interest in painting and visual art, using creativity as a personal form of expression beyond Hollywood. In various interviews, Carrey began to speak more openly about deeper philosophical ideas. He frequently reflected on fame, identity, and the concept of ego, questioning how success and public recognition shape a person's sense of self. His perspective gradually shifted, and he became more introspective, often challenging the very structures of the entertainment industry that had made him a global icon. He also distanced himself from certain film roles that involved excessive violence, especially in the wake of real-world tragedies. Carrey expressed discomfort with how media portrayals of violence might influence society, indicating a growing awareness of the broader impact of entertainment content. Jim Carrey's life and career cannot be reduced to a single label or a simple narrative. His journey is not a straightforward tale of success or failure, nor is it only a contrast between comedy and tragedy. Instead, it represents a continuous tension between extremes, light and darkness, joy and pain, performance and reality, constantly interacting throughout his life. From an early age, he was a child who learned to use laughter as a form of survival. Humor was not just entertainment for him, it became a coping mechanism shaped by uncertainty, fear, and emotional complexity within his surroundings. This early adaptation would later evolve into something far greater on the world stage. As his career developed, he transformed into a performer who turned personal struggle and emotional depth into artistic expression. His physical comedy, expressive energy, and dramatic range were not separate from his inner experiences, but deeply connected to them. In many ways, his performances reflected the intensity of his internal world. At the peak of his success, he reached a level of fame few performers ever achieve. Yet even at the highest point of recognition and achievement, he discovered that external success does not necessarily bring internal peace. The noise of fame could not quiet the questions within him, nor resolve the deeper search for meaning. Whether seen as a comedic genius, a serious dramatic actor, or a highly complex and evolving personality, Jim Carrey continues to stand as one of the most intriguing figures in modern entertainment history. Behind every character, every performance, and every mask he has brought to life on screen, there has always been a human being searching for something beyond applause, something deeper, quieter, and more enduring than fame itself.